and content creator for our online OET packages that we do. Yeah, it's nice to be here with you all. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes just to make sure that everyone is joining us. So as it's 2 o'clock, I'll just give us a minute before we get started. So as I was just saying, if you've just joined us, my name is Beth. I'm Assistant Director of Studies here at West London English School in Ealing, and I'm also an OET teacher. We have a lot of OET courses here at the school, face-to-face. We've got online courses, and we've got OET packages that you can do as well. So I'm a content creator for those packages as well. So yeah, today is a mock test for reading part C. So I think we're probably going to be here for about an hour and a half-ish. We're really going to go into detail with the answers for this. So yeah, I think let's get started. My OET colleague is here on Facebook commenting and replying to you. So please do say hi. Yeah, good luck with this test. So we are looking at reading today. We are looking at reading part C. And I'll just give you a little bit of info about it before we go into this mock test. So together, we for this section of the reading, we have part B and C together. Now, ideally, this means you will spend about 30 minutes on part C because it's much longer than part B. And this will give you about 5 minutes at the end to go through everything and make sure that you're happy with your answers. Now, there are 2 texts. They are of interest to you guys. So, for example, you know, it could be on yellow fever, it could be on antibiotics, so many different topics, but always in a healthcare setting. And you have 8 multiple choice questions with 4 answers, A, B, C, and D. And the focus of this reading part is really about detail and about opinion, but we're going to have a bit of a look quickly at the kind of way to approach this and what they're looking for in the exam. Now, my colleague Harmy, who you've probably all seen on OET Live before, has done a full lesson on reading part C, which is all about how to actually tackle this task. So as I said before, this lesson is a mock test. So if you would like to, I've put a QR code up here. Let me just see if I move myself. You should be able to get your phone and with your camera, hold it up to the QR code. And if you want to watch that lesson before you do this test, that would be a good idea. Now you can watch this first and then watch Harmy's lesson. It doesn't matter too much. And the other thing you can do is just, if you remember by the time you've got to maybe the end of this today, you might think, okay, I'll go back to the beginning. This recording will be available on the OET Facebook page. So you can go back and scan the QR code and watch this video of Harmy's. All right, so what are you being tested on in part C? Well, there is explicit meaning and implied meaning. Now, we've spoken about this before, whether explicit meaning is kind of exactly what they've written is what they mean. And then with implied meaning, we have got inference. So this is that they are, the writer, what you're reading is not saying exactly what you, like the inference is thinking about other things that, you know, you've got something written, but you might actually have to get some kind of idea around it, but it's not exactly what is said. Now we have attitude and opinion questions as well in part C. So this is thinking all about what the writer is saying and what their kind of opinion is. Again, they might say explicitly, or it might be implied. So you might need to kind of guess what they're saying, even though the exact words aren't there. We have different ideas at sentence level and at paragraph level. So we're going to be having a look at that a little bit today. This is making sure that in one sentence you understand all the different parts of it and how they are connected. Whereas at paragraph level, it's about, for example, maybe you've got a sentence at the top of the paragraph and a sentence at the bottom, and you have to work out the kind of relationship between those sentences. And then we have, finally, this is more to do with the kind of grammar and vocabulary. It's being able to understand the references. Very often in part C, they will underline a section and they'll say, what does this refer to? Or what does this mean? And you have to look around it to try and find what that actually relates to. So we are going to start this mock. Here is extract 1. So you're going to see something like this, and you have 2 minutes to read through the paragraph and to try and answer the question. Okay, so let's have a look at the answer. So with this question, we know that it's about attitude and opinion because we've got the verb believes. And because it's about Dr. Adam Roberts, obviously we've got to check this section where we've got his quote so that we know what he's talking about. And when we look at the answers, we can see I've just highlighted some different words for you so that you can really think about what they're talking about. So we've got the bacteria are resistant to antibiotics. Antibiotics are often not required, or they're ineffective, or diseases are becoming untreatable. Now, it's really important in the exam that you really look at detail of the wording of A, B, C, and D. Sometimes it's just one word, it kind of like, it sounds right, but actually it's not because of one little word. So if we have a look at A, bacteria are resistant to antibiotics. And what I've got here is this line. So we've now got these resistance mechanisms in some bacteria. Now we've got the word some there. So when we've got this sentence, bacteria are resistant, it makes it sound like a fact, and it makes it sound like all of them are resistant. And it's not, it's just that some bacteria have resistance mechanisms. So A is not our answer. If we look at B, antibiotics are often not required. When we look at this quote, he's talking about the, there's antibiotics used all the time, not at the right time, like inappropriately, and that they're overused. But actually, he's not saying that antibiotics are not required. Even though we've got the words overuse and inappropriate, what it's saying is if we're using antibiotics too much, or we're not using them for the right diseases. However, for some infections, of course, or for infections in general, antibiotics are required. So this is not quite right. And if we look at C, antibiotics are now ineffective. Again, this is kind of a blanket statement. It sounds like it's a fact, and actually we know that this isn't right. And we can see here in the wording, we've got that inappropriate use. And again, we've now got these resistance mechanisms in some bacteria. So it's not that they are all ineffective. So that can't be the answer. Now D is our answer. Diseases are becoming untreatable. And because we've got this word becoming, it's showing that kind of slow stage where, you know, there's maybe all of them are treatable, and then slowly, because of this resistance that we're building up, they're slowly becoming untreatable. And in this first line, we've got antibiotics resistance. It means once easily treatable diseases are once again becoming deadly. And then where we've got at the bottom where Adam Roberts is saying, so it's why we're seeing the problem that we're seeing now. So what they're actually testing you on here in this part C, with this, we've got, as I said before, with a paragraph, you might have a line at the top and a line at the bottom. You've got to be able to kind of see the relationship between those. And that is what is important here. So what's being tested here? Well, attitude and opinion, and also ideas at paragraph level, like I just said. Okay, let's move on to number 2. Again, you've got 2 minutes for this. Okay, so let's have a look at the possible options. So where we've got A, B, C, and D, it's quite a good idea in the exam to highlight or underline the verbs, because they will help you to understand the different options a little bit better. So for example, here we've got to uncover new medicines. Now, to uncover new medicines is to kind of like to find or to discover new medicines. We've got develop, which is obviously a little bit like create. Treat, you know what treat is, and create. So let's have a look. We're going to start with B. Now, we can see where it says develop new drug-resistant medicines, we do have that line to develop new medicines. However, while we say these attempts, when we use the word these, it's because we're talking about something very close. If we use those, it could be a bit further away, but these suggest something close. And actually, if we look, we've got that first line, develop new medicine, and then these attempts all the way down. So it doesn't really work. The other reason why B is wrong is because you've got drug-resistant medicines. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't make sense. You don't want medicines that are drug-resistant. So that can't be our answer. If we have a look at C, to treat mutating infections, we can see again to treat these emerging mutating infections. But again, we've got that kind of problem where you've got these attempts and the emerging mutating infections are kind of really far away from these. When we say these, we would kind of expect it to be in the previous sentence. So this can't be right. Let's have a look at D, to create medicines to overcome drug infections. Well, we do have that line, and it is a lot closer because it's the sentence before these. So we need to really check this carefully. Uncover new medicines that could overcome drug resistance. Now, remember, before uncover, we said that uncover means to kind of to find or to discover, and this is about create, so that doesn't quite match up. And also we've got to overcome drug infections, and here it says overcome drug resistance, so it doesn't work. So our answer has to be A, to uncover new medicines. And what we've got, if we look carefully, so Dr. Roberts has been attempting to uncover new medicines that could overcome drug resistance, an issue that has become a major public health concern. So here you've got the major public health concern, which is drug resistance, and these attempts is the action, which is uncovering new medicines. So that has to be our answer. Okay. And it's the ideas at sentence level that are being tested here, but it's also that kind of referencing of what you're looking at with the word like these. It's a bit lexical as well. Let's move on to number 3. Again, you've got 2 minutes. Okay, so with question 3, where we've got this verb assumed, we know that when we see something like the word assumed or suggests or infers, we are looking at inference. Now, inference, remember, means that the direct language in the paragraph is not what they are looking for. Assumed means you can kind of think, well, because it says this, we can kind of assume that something else is true. So it's not necessarily actually written there. So it was well thought out. Now, thought out means planned. And if we look here, the quote from Dr. Robertson, what we do is grid out the individual bacteria, but there's nothing here which really suggests anything to do with the planning. And because the quote is in the present simple, it sounds like quite a normal routine. We use present simple for routines. Also, just because it says from samples taken by swabbing the beards of 20 men, it doesn't sound like there's anything really there to do with the planning. It sounds like a normal process. We've also got that indication there of over just a 4-week period. And the just here means only, like, oh, it only took 4 weeks, which suggests that maybe that was unexpected. So then it's not necessarily been well thought out. Maybe it was, but from what we've seen here, it doesn't sound like we can necessarily assume that. We've also got this language here, we're able to grow. Now, it could just say, Dr. Roberts and his team of researchers grew more than 100 strains. But the fact that it says we're able to grow sounds again like it was unexpected, like they had the ability to grow, which they didn't realize before. So again, it shows that letter A can't be the answer. Now, if we have a look at B, where it says the process was more complex than usual, when we look at it, there's nothing here that really indicates anything about it being difficult. Again, as I said before, we've got a lot of present simple. So they swabbed, next they tested, and then what we do is grid out. All of this suggests that it's a very kind of routine experiment, nothing more complex, and we're not comparing it with anything else. So that can't be our answer. If we have a look at C, the swabbing was thorough. I've taken just that first line for you because that is the bit that is all about swabbing. And thorough means detailed or in-depth. And again, there's nothing here that says that the swabbing was, very detailed or different to a normal swabbing. It's just swabbing 20 men. You could possibly think that because they grew more than 100 strains, maybe it was thorough swabbing, and that's what helped to grow 100 strains. So it could possibly be C. But let's have a look at D. The amount of bacteria was unforeseen. Now, unforeseen means surprising or unexpected. And as I said before, in this line, we've got were able to grow, which suggests that they didn't realize this, but they had the ability to grow after they had swabbed, which is something they could have just said grew, but they didn't. They used that word able. And the key here is that word over just a 4-week period, which again suggests it was unexpected. If it was over a 4-week period, there's nothing there to show that it was a surprise, but that word just really does. So D is our answer. And what they're testing here is obviously this inference, this implicit language, but also a bit of lexical reference where we've got that word just. You've got to think about what that means and how it helps. Okay, let's have a look at number 4. We've got 2 minutes for this. Okay, let's have a look at the answers. So the first answer is antibiotics. Now, if we, because they is a pronoun, it means that we can replace it with a noun. So if I change they for the word antibiotics, it says, so antibiotics produce things like antibiotics, which sounds a bit bizarre. Now, we've also got right at the beginning showing that they actually produce antibiotics themselves, which is the bacteria in the beard samples. And they is a little bit far away from it. And as we said, this bottom one, again, if you say antibiotics produce antibiotics, it's not quite right. So that can't be our answer. If we have a look at toxins, so we've got, it was theorized that just as some bacteria have evolved to develop drug resistance, other bacteria have evolved to produce toxins. And if we read the next line, you've got this environment like a beard where there's different bacteria, they fight, and that they there is about the bacteria. So toxins is just a little bit far away for it to make sense. We've really got to think about they and everything that it relates to in the sentence. So the key word here with they that we need to find, it says, so they produce things, and that they is referring back to this they. And the they, which is they fight for food, is referring back to there are many different bacteria. The bacteria fight for food and resources and space. So the bacteria produce things like antibiotics. Now, what that means is, again, because of the they, which is referring to the bacteria here, bacteria has to be the answer. Now, when you have a question like this in the exam, you've got to look all around the word that is underlined or in bold to find what else it's referring to. So here, because they refers back to they, and then that they refers back to the bacteria. Where you've got beards, we can't say that the beards produce things like antibiotics because it's like a beard where there are many different bacteria. And it's not that the beards fight for food, resources, and space. I mean, it would be interesting to see beards fighting, but that's doesn't make sense. That can't be what it is. So bacteria is our answer. Okay. So here they're testing your ideas at sentence level. Again, like we just said, and also that lexical reference. So reference is always about that verb refer and what is it being referred to. Okay, let's move on. We've got question 5 and you've got 2 minutes. Okay, let's have a look. So we've got another inference question here. So it's something that we are assuming, it's something that's not necessarily written there. And this is about the development of new antibiotics. Now, if we look at answer A, we've got only 56% of the 89 new drugs produced in 2002. Now we can see highlighted here, we've got the 89 new drugs approved in 2002, but it says highlighted here, none of them were new antibiotics. So it's not 56%. The 56% is above that, where it's saying that the amount of new antibiotics approval fell by 56%. So that can't be our answer. Now, if we have a look at B, there was a 56% reduction of antibiotics in 2004. Well, it's saying fell by 56%. That sounds good because of synonyms, reduction and fell by. But the question says in 2004. And this is a report in 2004, but actually it was between 1998 and 2002 that there was the 56% reduction. So that means because it's not 2004, it can't be the answer. If we look at C, the shortage of new antibiotics is due to the FDA not approving any of them. Now, if we have a look at what is underlined here, we know that the FDA approval fell, so that sounds good, the shortage of them. Then it says, what is more, of 89 new drugs that were approved, none were new antibiotics. So we could possibly infer or assume that the FDA didn't approve any, and that's why there are no new antibiotics. However, we've got to look at that first line. It's all about the paragraph, and this is why it's really important you read through the whole thing. Because this first line is saying there's been a steep decline. This means very quickly going down, a steep decline in the research and production of new antibiotics. So it sounds more like that is the problem. The shortage is not because the FDA aren't approving them, it's because there's been a steep decline in research and production. So that can't be right. If we have a look at D, doctors would probably prescribe new antibiotics if they were available. Now, we've got all this information at the top, which is really important that you read, but then this underlined line, this lack of new antibiotics has left doctors with no choice but to use the same medications. Now, this vocabulary here, if you are left with no choice but to do something, it means you have no other options. So what we can infer or assume is that the doctors have been left with no choice, but they would prescribe antibiotics if there were new ones available. So that is our answer. Again, it's all down to inference. And as I said before, if you go back with this being recorded, if you go right back to the beginning, there is that QR code. If you scan that, you will see Harmy's lesson, who's done a lesson on inference and on everything for reading Part C. So it is worth a watch. So it's implicit meaning, it's the inference here, which we knew already. Let's have a look at question 6. So again, you've got 2 minutes. Let's have a look through the answers then. So answer A, only have short-term benefits. Now we do have the word short here. Antibiotics are short course therapies. However, benefits and therapies and short-term and short course are different things. So this can't be our answer. Of course, benefits are the advantages, whereas therapies are things that are going to cure you. And short course is kind of for a short length of time, whereas the short-term benefits means you'll have advantages for a short amount of time, but then your problems will come back. So that doesn't quite work. The vocabulary is not right. If we have a look at B, are profitable for pharmaceutical companies. So we do have this section, as we said before, antibiotics are short course therapies, but then we have companies know they will make more money selling a drug you have to take every day for the rest of your life. So actually, what this is saying, antibiotics are short courses and they make more money if you have to take the drug forever, which you don't with antibiotics. So that means really that it shouldn't be profitable, it would be not profitable. If not profitable were there, that would be the answer. But that's not what it says, so that's wrong. If we look at C, have no commercial value. There is that line, it is not economically sensible for pharmaceutical companies, and then it explains why, which is as we've just said. Now, if B is are not profitable for pharmaceutical companies, that is the same meaning as the answer in C, have no commercial value, which means there's no financial benefit for the business, as I said. So if they're going to make more money by giving you the drug to take every day, then it's true that antibiotics have no commercial value because they are only short course therapies. And if we just look at the last one, if you had D as your answer, are complicated and expensive, you might have looked, complicated and complex are synonyms, and pricey and expensive. However, this is producing and testing a new antibiotic. And remember that the question is antibiotics are complicated, but it's that producing and testing antibiotics are complicated and expensive. So that can't be our answer. So they're testing you here on explicit meaning. That means the answer is there, you can see it. And it's also checking again at sentence level that you understand what the relationship is between the sentences. And here that sentence is in the quotes, antibiotics up to rest of your life. Question 7, here you go. Okay, this is an interesting question. I think the key here is overall concern, because it's one of those annoying ones where all of the answers are in the paragraph. So let's take A. It's getting more difficult to develop effective antibiotics. And we do have that line, most attempts to develop new antibiotics have failed. So let's have a look at B. The same lead compounds are being rediscovered. And it says here, drug screens for new antibiotics tend to rediscover the same lead compounds over and over again. So B sounds like it's the right answer. So does A. Have a look at D. Over 100 antibacterial agents have been developed. It says it in this line here. So the key, when we look at C, to make things worse, most attempts to develop new antibiotics have failed, which is why moving forward with this latest beard discovery is not a certainty. Now, we do have those other three answers in there, but this is the overall concern. And when you add up, it's more difficult to develop antibiotics because the same lead compounds are being discovered and over 100 antibacterial agents have been developed. The overall concern here is that the beard discovery might not have any benefits because of A, B, and D. So that's why C is our answer. So this question is really checking your ideas at paragraph level. You have to, again, make sure in the exam that you read through the whole paragraph, because it's going to help you. You don't read through it quickly and think, oh, that's the answer. Because if it's a question like this, overall concern, you need to understand everything. Okay, here is our last one for extract 1. You have 2 minutes. All right, now I personally think this is quite a difficult question. When we're talking, we've got the word refers, so we know it's about references to other parts of the text. Now, if we have a look at this first one, antibiotics are scarcely used. The word scarcely means rarely or hardly ever. And with this line, we've got, scientists have little choice but to pursue alternative options while they still try and develop new ones. So that is kind of helping us to know whether A is right or not. Maybe because they're struggling to develop antibiotics, they will be scarcely used. But then we've got that line there, antibiotic resistance has become such a problem that WHO declared this. So the key to this question is understanding post-antibiotic era, which is the post is after, and era is a time. So it means a time when the antibiotics aren't used. So that means actually that A can't be our answer, because from the actual vocabulary that is there, it doesn't mean they're rarely used. It means a time after antibiotics, which means that they are not used. Now, if we have a look at B, saying antibiotics are replaced with alternative therapies. Alternative therapies are a little bit different to pursuing alternative options. So alternative therapies, we're thinking more of things like homeopathy. So because of the vocabulary there, that one is not correct. Now, if we look at C, antibiotics are no longer produced. Because of antibiotic resistance becoming a problem, it's possible that they are no longer produced. However, because of that language, which is that resistance has become such a problem that we're heading for something. So heading is kind of like slowly getting to a kind of final place. Because of the antibiotic resistance, that's why we won't be using antibiotics. So it's not that they're not being produced. It's not that the companies aren't trying to produce them, because we know that they are continuing to battle with making new ones. So it's that resistance that shows us that they will no longer be used. So actually D has to be our answer. That is a difficult question, I think. So again, this is checking your references and understanding the phrases, and it's really about being able to distinguish, what post-antibiotic era really means, and then referencing that to other parts of the text. Okay, we're moving on to extract 2. We are going to do this one a little bit quicker now that we're kind of in the hang of it. So here is a nice one about sleep deprivation, which doesn't sound very nice. So you've got 2 minutes. All right. I don't know about you, but I find this very interesting, this topic of sleep problems. Let's have a look at the question then. So we've got the writer uses Eve Van Korter's words, and we've got here the quotation. So that's the section that we need to be looking at. But we also probably need to have a look at the first bit, because remember, they're testing you on ideas at paragraph level and sentence level. So you might need to have a look at that bit as well. And we've got explain, we know what that means. Reinforce is kind of, double check, show support of a view. Question is like, is that true or not? Asking questions about it. And obviously describe. Now, the first one is wrong. We're not explaining the causes of sleep deprivation. There's nothing here that shows the reasons why someone is sleep deprived. It does talk about emotional distress, cognitive impairments, obesity, but all of this is a health burden, a health problem. It's not a cause. If we have a look at C, questions and research findings, it does say about studies, but there's nothing questioning the studies here. It's just saying in the studies we've done, all the variables they measured were affected. It's not questioning the findings. And if we have a look at D, describing the challenges involved in sleep deprivation, it's the same sort of thing. There's nothing here talking about the difficulties of doing a study on sleep. You might assume that, but there's nothing here about it. So our answer is B, reinforce a view about the impact of sleep deprivation. We've got that first line saying millions of people suffer myriad health burdens, so a lot of health problems when they have sleep problems. And then with this quote, saying every variable we measured, like there's not a system in the body that's not affected by sleep. So it's those two sections that when you put them together, B is your answer. It's supporting that view. Here is question 2, and again, you've got 2 minutes. All right, let's go through this. So we're going to start by looking at C. Sorry, motorbike just went past. Researchers have tended to confirm earlier ideas about its purpose. Now, if we're thinking about earlier ideas, we're thinking about a different time frame. And in that first sentence, we've got 2 decades ago, sleep and what the scientists believed. A common refrain is like a common belief. So 2 decades ago, that sleep was performed by the brain in the interest of the brain. And then it goes on to say that recent studies confirm, so we've got the word confirm, that neurological function and cognition are messed up. So and we've got that middle line as well, we're saying, it wasn't a fully elaborated theory, it wasn't complete, but it wasn't wrong. So C is our answer here, because in the past 2 decades ago, the scientists believed it was by the brain in the interest of the brain. It wasn't wrong. Numerous recent studies have confirmed that neurological function and cognition are messed up in sleep loss. So C has to be our answer. With A, scientific opinion about its function has changed. Well, if you read through it, it's not that it's changed, it's actually just that it's confirmed that they were right. So it's the opposite of this. If we're talking about controversy, there's now more controversy about it. There's not really anything here about controversy at all, apart from just saying, it wasn't a fully elaborated theory, but this isn't really controversial. And if we look at D, studies undertaken in the past have formed the basis of current research, but there's nothing here that says the studies in the past have then prompted the kind of base for research now. It's just talking about the belief of scientists and that they were right in their ideas. So that is why C is the answer. Here's question 3. You've got 2 minutes. Okay, this is an interesting one. So the question is about what impressed Bob. And we have his quote here: the brain has cleverly designed, so it sounds like he's quite impressed here, has cleverly designed a 2-stage defense against the consequences of sleep loss. We've got this here about he discovered that as adenosine levels rise in sleep deprivation, so does the concentration of the receptors, which helps the sleep-inducing effect. And so C is our answer here, because what he's saying is that, as the adenosine levels rise, so do the concentration of adenosine receptors. And then his quote, to show that he's impressed, is that the brain has cleverly designed a 2-stage defense against the consequences of sleep loss. So he's referring back to that previous sentence that we've got here about the levels rising. So that's why C has to be our answer. Here is question 4 and 2 minutes. Okay. So to understand this, we've already read the paragraph for the previous question, but we've got to find that exact sentence with the phrase, which we've got down here. We've got this line, adenosine may underlie some of the cognitive deficits. Now, underlie means like be part of, it doesn't mean completely. Now, as well, for this question, so A is the answer. Sleep deprivation has consequences beyond its impact. That's because this line highlighted adenosine may underlie some, not all, some of the cognitive deficits. So that's a part of it. But then as well, where we've got but, adenosine levels are by no means the be all and end all. You've got to try and understand exactly what this means. Now, you should know by no means, which means not entirely or definitely not everything. And when we say the be all and end all, we mean everything. So what this is meaning is adenosine levels are not everything to do with sleep deprivation's effects on the brain or the body. And if we look again at the question, we've got consequences, which works with effects down at the bottom. Like sleep deprivation has effects on the brain and body beyond its impact on adenosine levels. That's why A has to be the answer here. Here is question 5, and you have 2 minutes. Okay. So we are looking for what is significant about the findings. So something that was very important or possibly unexpected about the results of the experiment. Now, this first section that is highlighted is all about what the experiment actually was. It's not about the findings. It's just about, you know, the method and how they did it. But this middle section and the last section is more about the findings. So as we can see here, during sleep debt and recovery, between those 2 times, researchers gave the participants a glucose tolerance test and found striking differences. Now, when we say striking differences, it means a very big difference. And we can see that with answer D, we've got the word contrast, and contrast and differences are kind of synonyms for each other. Also, because striking means a lot, the extent usually means very big, how very big or how very small it was. So, sorry, we can see sleep debt and recovery. Here are synonyms. We've got striking differences with the contrast. And then we've got the metabolic and metabolism there. Now, the important thing here is not that sentence we've looked at, but it's this last bit, which is the big surprise. So something significant was the effect being much greater than we thought. So this is the effect of the glucose tolerance test between sleep debt and recovery. And it's saying it's much greater, which is a large extent or a striking difference. And so D has to be our answer. If we have a look at answer A, the rate at which the sleep deprived men, the rate would be the time that they entered the pre-diabetic state, like as when it happened. And there's nothing about that mentioned. So it can't be A. It can't be B, because the fact that sleep deprivation had an influence on their glucose levels, well, they expected there to be some kind of influence on it. It doesn't say how big the influence was. And then there's nothing here about the individual men for C, so it can't be C. It's not comparing the different men and the research that they found between them. So as well as it clearly being D, also A, B, and C are wrong from the reading. Okay, here we've got question 6, and again you have 2 minutes. All right, now this question is obviously about references and what everything is referring to. Now, when we have pronouns like it or these that we saw before, we know that it's likely to be a reference to something close by. So while it is important that you read the whole thing, with a question like this, when it's clearly got the paragraph and the word it, I would read that sentence first, and then you can kind of go back and see what it refers to. So here we have that sentence, this is because it degrades the energy molecule. So we want to be looking for what degrades the energy molecule. And if we read the line before, because we need to always check before to find that initial reference, Bashir has found evidence that enforced lack of sleep sends the brain into a catabolic or energy consuming state. Now, I've underlined the word this here, and we need to think, well, what does this refer to? Now, when we say this is because this is the brain being sent into a catabolic or energy consuming state. So this is referring to sending the brain into this state. So what is it? Well, what does the sending, what does the action? And the answer is enforced lack of sleep. Now with pronouns, remember you can replace them with nouns. So what we could do here is change the sentence to, sending the brain into a catabolic state is because enforced lack of sleep degrades the energy molecule. So when we do that replacement as well, we can see the answer has to be enforced lack of sleep, because this is what does the action. This is because enforced lack of sleep degrades the energy molecule. So that's why the brain is sent into this catabolic or energy consuming state. Here is question 7. Okay, this is another quite difficult question. You've really got to read through the whole paragraph in order to understand what the answer is going to be. So we're looking for the findings or the results that were surprising. And we've got here, neurons need more energy to stay awake. She says, as well as unexpected changes. So this is something surprising, such as undigested cellular debris. Signs of cellular aging that are unusual were found. So that's something unusual as well as something surprising. Let's look a little bit more. So the number was small, but it's worrisome because it's only 4 to 5 days of sleep deprivation. So what happened was these mice were deprived for 4 or 5 days. And then after they had sleep recovery for 36 hours, we've got here this last line, a period during which she expected normalcy to return. So she expected those 36 hours for everything to be back to normal, but it says those changes remained. And those changes are the signs of, we've got it here, signs of cellular aging that are unusual, and those changes remain. So that is what is surprising. So if we look at our answers, it is A, that is our answer. There was no reversal of a certain effect of sleep deprivation, and that effect is the 4 or 5 days. And there's no reversal. The cellular aging, she expected everything to return to normal, but it didn't. The changes remained. It's very interesting, I think. Okay. Now I'm going to go through this with why the other ones are wrong, because it's a bit complicated. So with B, the cortical neurons of the mice underwent structural changes. Well, we can see here that they found structural changes in the cortical neurons when they were kept awake, but it's not something surprising. It does state it, but it doesn't say anything about this being a surprise. Ooh. With C, there was evidence of an increased need for energy in the brains of mice. Well, she says, which makes sense. So they saw signs of mitochondrial activation because the neurons need more energy to stay awake, but because she said which makes sense, it means it was not surprising. So it can't be C. And then finally, the neurological response to sleep deprivation only took a few hours. There's nothing actually about that written in there with how long it took for that to be there, especially as it says, the 36 hours of sleep recovery, she expected normalcy to return. So it wasn't a few hours of the neurological response. So that can't be our answer either. All right, this is our last question. So again, you've got 2 minutes. Okay, now with this final question, we've got the word suggest, which shows that it is going to be about inference. So the answer is not necessarily going to be very clear here. But let's have a look. So it's the quote from Van Korter is used to suggest what? So we've got to really have a look at that quote. And when we have a quote, we've also got to look at what's above it, because the chances are that they're checking for your paragraphing and that you understand the differences there and how they help each other and support each other. So Van Korter is saying people like to define a clear pathway of action, but with sleep deprivation, everything you measure is affected. So if you are sleep deprived, everything in your body is affected. Now our answer is B. It could be difficult to develop any treatment for sleep deprivation. And that's because as well, with that line above, if we have a look at it here, that line that says but, it says, but with so much of our physiology affected, an effective therapy other than sleep is hard to imagine. And this is because if we go back to the answer, it's how are you supposed to develop any treatment for sleep deprivation when everything you measure is affected? So this is the reason that it has to be B. All right, so in general, make sure that once you've read the question that you read through the whole paragraph and try to understand it. Remember, it's not about just reading a line or just understanding a word. It's also about the relations between the words and the sentences in every paragraph. Move on if you can't find the answer. The time is really short in the exam. So have a look at question 1, read paragraph 1. If you don't know, move on, go back to it. It might be that once you've read through the whole thing, that you have a better general understanding of the kind of the gist or even the detail of the extract. So you can then kind of start again from the ones that you missed and see if you can find the answer. approach each question individually. So as we were saying back with extract 1, you've got inference, you've got the attitude and opinion, you've got lexical references. So everything is always very different. So you've got to make sure you read everything really carefully. Carefully consider each option. Now, what we've done today is we haven't just said, this is the answer, move on. We've gone through why all of the other answers are also wrong. And this is a really good thing to do, because sometimes you might get that actually maybe 3 answers sound good, but it's the 4th answer that's right because it encompasses the other 3. And we actually had that earlier as an example. So go through them really clearly. Why is this right? And why are these wrong? That will help. Use inference. So just because there are maybe synonyms doesn't mean that the meaning is the same. So if there is something written, you might need to kind of think a little bit to see, well, are they actually suggesting something else because they've written this line? And finally, yeah, just manage your time. Like we've got above, move on if you can't find the answer. Don't spend too long on everything. Just try and do one. If you can't find it, go to the next. If you can't find it, go to the next one. You don't want to spend so much time getting answer 1 and 2 correct that you miss 3 to 8, for example. So I hope that you've enjoyed this lesson or this mock test, if you can enjoy a test. I just want to tell you a little bit about the courses that we have here at West London English School. So what you can see here on the screen now is our reading course. This is an online package. You have 6 video lessons with either myself or Harmy, who is our head of OET. And you've also got 6 practice tests. Now, these tests are original material. You won't have seen them anywhere else, only with us, with our school. They've been designed by Harmy and myself. So what you see there is all going to be new for you. We have, similar with listening, 5 video lessons and 6 practice tests with feedback that show you exactly why the answers are right and wrong. We have writing. Now, the writing is more detailed. There are 11 video lessons, so quite a lot of stuff to watch. There is some grammar sections and some vocabulary sections there as well. You know, things like how to use having and the past participle, this sort of stuff. And there's also 5 brand new tests, again, that you won't have seen before. Whether you are a doctor or a nurse or a pharmacist, it's all there for you. We give everyone a unique case notes, depending on your profession. We also have a writing correction service. If you don't want the videos, you can just pay per letter, or you can buy a block of letters. What happens is with that, we will send you case notes. Again, they're new, you won't have seen them before. You write your letter, send it back to us, and we will give you feedback on it, including marking the things like, you know, the content, the conciseness and clarity. So you'll really see where your strengths and where your weaknesses are to help you get that, hopefully a grade B in your writing or higher. We also have speaking. This is 5 video lessons, and then also 5 video role plays live. So this would be either working with Harmy, myself, or Catalin, and actually having a private lesson where we go through 2 role plays, and you get 5 of those. In general, we have courses for nurses and doctors, which include everything. So you're listening, reading, speaking, and writing. We can see the details of those here. So the silver is the more basic plan, but you've still got some mock tests, mock papers in there. The gold has video lessons, and it's got more practice in there. And then the platinum has everything that you could ever wish for, I think. It's got private lessons, it's got brand new writing tasks, brand new mock tests. You've got 6 tests for reading and listening. And you'll also be assigned a personal tutor. So you'll be working with either Harmy, myself, or Catalin again. So here's our team. This is Harmy, who is our OET course director. You have probably seen him a lot on the OET live sessions, or also on our YouTube channel. And there's me in the middle. I'm Beth. an OET teacher and assistant director of studies here at the school. And then we have Catalin, who is an OET teacher with us, and she works as an interlocutor for OET, which is great. So she's really good at doing the speaking practice with students here, as that's her job. So thank you for watching. If you are ever in London, or if you want to have a chat with us, get in touch. Go on our website. You can send us a message or come in, have a cup of coffee. We could chat about OET all day here. So I hope that you have enjoyed this session. Please let us know your feedback, and good luck with your OET. Thank you. Bye.